Our guest for the next hour is the 51st president of the Law Society of Kenya. Good morning, Faith Odhiambo.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
I'm fine, and
it's
you?
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Yes, like City said when you walked in, and like the last time you were here, when you had not slept for I don't know how many days, this time you look a bit relaxed.
Rested.
Rested.
But when you look at her carefully, it's like she's carrying the world on her shoulders.
I think what she's done is that now she has actually now sat on the seat properly.
Vizuri.
And she has managed, she knows.
She had adjusted it nicely.
At 3 a.m. I'm going to get a call. At 6 a.m. I'm going to have to get up. At 4:15 a.m. I'll have to be talking to some certain police officer, or I'll be calling. Now you know.
Yes. And in between, there'll be all these unplanned emergencies,
yes,
which will come to my desk, and I have to deal with them.
And beyond that, I still have to pay my bills. So I have to also run my life as a lawyer and make my money. Hey, Buana, that's a lot. Did you know that this was it when you were asking for people to vote for you in as president? I know you had been a vice president, but...
It was busy, but we've never had this
I have asked
before.
A previous vice president before. Is this what you thought of when you wanted to be president? So let me ask this former vice president. Is this what you thought of when you wanted to be president?
No, this is not what I thought of. Of course. No one thinks that people will be picked up every day, and you're always having an emergency every single day.
Okay, there is no chairman in the history of the LSK who have had to deal with the issues you're dealing with now, has there?
I think maybe they had different issues. We have had chairmen during the Moi era as well, when people are fighting for multi-parties.
When Kina Moita were dealing with those things,
yeah,
dealing with
so they've had also issues. Their equal share of weight on their shoulders. Yeah,
But that one was different. It's a meat and potato thing. To dictatorship, you do what you're told. If you don't do what you're told, you know where you're going to go. And there was no complexity in the law. The moment you have a constitution like the one we have, it gets very, very interesting.
Starts bringing other stories.
Oh, yes, it does. Oh, yes, it does. And from many, many, many quarters. So you're not just dealing, because that one was government is the problem.
Yes.
Okay? It's no longer just government is the problem. We didn't have civil society who also think they're the government. No. We didn't have...
Or the law society.
Or the law society.
That's it's a law. Okay. Faith, karibu sana. City will give you the day's proverb. This week we are in the state of Libya.
Yeah, we're in the state of Libya. Lydia, not Lydia, it's Libya. Yes.
Our producer Lydia, the first time she heard this, she wondered, what's wrong? In what state am I in?
Yes.
State of Lydia. No.
Libya. Okay. Walk with sandals until you get good shoes.
Walk with sandals until you get good shoes.
that's interesting.
Madam President, what's your interpretation of this?
Well, I would say that cut your coat according to thy cloth. So keep going. That use the tools that you have to start that journey until one day you make it. Don't wait that until you have good shoes to start walking. So just use whatever tools, if it's sandals, slippers, just work with what you have to try and achieve your goals until you make it.
It's a simple one. It's a simple proverb, right? Simple, direct proverb. This proverb was not written by a lawyer. If it was written by a lawyer, it would be 4 sentences.
Really?
Walk if you must.
Yes. Wear sandals even if they're not available.
and when available.
Yes.
Hey.
Yeah.
Listen, there's a story on page 10 of the Standard today.
Yeah.
The family of lawyer John Eric Wasonga, alias Lavani Milam, together with several activists, are calling for his return after he was abducted by unknown people in Ruaka, Kiambu County. According to his family, Wasonga, who is a vocal government critic, was picked up on Tuesday, October 29th at around 3:30 p.m. and his mobile phone was switched off. Addressing the media yesterday, the family and friends said that they were notified of his abduction by his expectant wife, and they have since searched in all police stations in Ruaka. He is nowhere to be found. They say, we don't know his whereabouts. We do not know where he is, whether he is alive or not. We just want him to be produced. They say they caught up with him, but he was able to record the number plate of the vehicle trailing him and a voice note of his encounter with them. This is what Vocal Africa CEO Hussein Khalid said Wesonga was picked up outside a supermarket in Rwaka. We are telling the government that cases of abductions and extrajudicial killings must cease. Madam President, what's going on?
The same question, but you should be asking the main president what's going on in his country. So we've gotten several distress calls like this in terms of abductions. What we normally ask is that the family come to the Law Society so that we prepare, if we have to, a habeas corpus application to go before the court, demanding that if it's they're in state custody, then they must be produced in court. That's the sort of style we have adopted, because once you've applied as much pressure and made as much noise, we of course have to go back to the courts, because we are guided by a constitution, we are guided by laws in this country. And so we find it quite alarming what's happening. Boniface being picked up, Okoh missing. We still have the MCA from Wajir missing, amongst others that people keep calling upon us. Yesterday we got a distress call of somebody who had been arrested in Embakasi because of, just exercising his right to picket. And even when we sent a lawyer there, they refused to release him on bond. And there's no offense that is not bailable now in this country. And so our challenge is that we also ask the courts to also be a bit tough, that if these state agencies do not obey court orders, by the time they come to court, let them free all these people and also deal with the necessary officers, because that's when we can actually see positive change. I always say that I don't think the Kitengela 3 would have been found if it wasn't for the hard stance that the High Court took with regards to that particular matter. And so if we don't see the courts also wearing their coat of or armor of bravery, then we'll foresee more Kenyans disappearing in this day and age, unfortunately.
So you make several applications for habeas corpus. Once you're told that somebody has gone missing, you're not able to trace them, you go to court and say, compel the state agencies to produce this person. How many are pending? How many applications have you made where actually still person hasn't been produced?
Well, we have quite a number. I would say like 4 or 5 that are still pending before court. But you see, the reality is the responsibility is on the police to know and to tell Kenyans where this person is. You can't say with all the intelligence you have, you cannot find Kenyans. When they want you, they use your phone to find you in record time. But when you've been abducted, they purportedly don't know your whereabouts. So we can't have our cake and eat it at the same time. They're either telling us that this person has been picked up, either it's an abduction by other known sources, but they use the resources they have in this country to trace and track, arrest whichever people or find where the victim is. Because you cannot say that Kenya, you're spending this amount of money in the budget that is taxpayers' money, yet you cannot explain where the citizens of this country are. You cannot ensure that there's peace and security in this country, because it should also be a worrying trend from the head of state to all heads of security agencies, because it creates a question is, if it's not government picking them up, then who is this? And you ought to be worried, because it means that then there Al-Shabaab or terrorists within the country picking up people, or the level of crime rate has risen so high that you cannot control your security in your own country. So I think this is not just a problem that they should think that let's sweep it or let's keep quiet about it. It should be a problem that they would be asked, even our foreign agencies that are in this country. I saw in the newspaper, it was reported that the head of MI6 was saying that they would withdraw any funding if Kenya doesn't, deal with this question of abduction. But I say this with a bit of satire, because in exchange they're bringing more intelligence to the country in terms of giving them equipment. So I hope this equipment will be used to find these missing Kenyans and tell us as a country, as a nation, that we can trust that the head of state is ensuring that his people are well protected.
There's something you've said. So around 4 or 5 applications that are pending where you said this person is missing, produce them.
Yeah.
But we hear that there are over 60 or so. How many cases of people who have disappeared, who families are saying they can't trace them? How many are we dealing with?
The last report by Kenya National Commission of Human Rights was at around 60. But you know how the Law Society works. We have to have a paper trail. You come, the family members have to come, report, then we proceed with the matter, because also we don't want to have chances of, unverified information or fictitious, and you'll be told that who told you to go to court. So we prefer to work with the families so that at all times, at the end of the day, the Law Society will be acting for you, but the family is the client. So that even the case of the Kitengela 3, we were working in conjunction with the family members that come to the Law Society to seek support. So with that regard, at least you're sure that you're working with credible information.
So far, 4 or thereabout families have actually come to you. And they said, we are looking for a loved one, we can't trace them. Is there a possibility of many more that have disappeared, but they haven't come to the Law Society of Kenya?
Well, there is a possibility.
And what reason would there be if they know that they can get support from the LSK? Why would they not come?
I wouldn't be able to answer that question, but there are various agencies. You've seen Vocal Africa is also in that space. There's Katiba, there's Kituo, there's the ICJ, there's the Kenya National Commission of Human Rights and Kenyan Human Rights Commission. So there are several organizations working on this space. So probably they've reached to the different civil society organizations. But we work with that kind of system because we have a toll-free line. So even if you call and report and you say this is your case and you want to share details, we are open to that and working, because the Law Society is not just in Nairobi. We are all around the country. So in terms of the question of reach, we're available through the different branches and chapters that people are able to reach and get assistance. And part and parcel of even this week, we are running the Legal Awareness Week, is to also create sensitization to members of the public where the Law Society is, how can you get them, and sharing free legal advice to those who are having challenges. We've had even some that were injured. A few that we had visited in Kenyatta National Hospital have been coming as well to just report their cases. But those who were not able to reach out to, that's part of the reason why we're doing this event, Legal Awareness Week, so that those who are still struggling and have concerns can easily reach the Law Society of Kenya.
One of the things that I've always found interesting, I was looking at this particular article in The Nation. What can UAS want from Ruto? I never cease to be amazed at the forked tongue approach to these matters when we have supposed friendly nations and their representatives talking to us about what we should do. See, one of the things that these clever nations do is, for instance, the USA for the longest time had Guantanamo Bay. So it wasn't within their own territory. But people would be abducted and then end up there. The British have Diego Garcia. Most people don't even know there is a Diego Garcia. But, meaning, they found a legal way of doing exactly what this government is doing. But the positive side of it is that they know. And this is something they understand very, very, very well. Anyway, their interests aside, earlier on in the morning we were saying, okay, this is what the newspapers tell us, but what else were they really telling us? I want to speculate. I want to speculate because I want to get onto this issue. You see, one of the things that the US did when there was a huge drug menace in their country, they realized a lot of these things had to do with money. So they started ensuring that there were laws that could help them trace and track money. The country that resisted this for the longest time was Switzerland. But Switzerland had to cave in because if you want to do big business on this planet, you really need to have a presence in the US, simply because of the way the economy is run. So they also changed their laws, did the referendum, and you now were able to trace money, partly because it was the drug money that ended up funding terrorists, ended up doing A, B, C, D. Now, we have a problem with monies that are intended for development doing all sorts of things other than the development for which is intended. Now, those systems would be able to trace and understand exactly where the money is. Usually the arm twisting comes in when they present you with this thing and say, we know exactly what you've been doing with this money and this way it's been going. So now, you either behave yourself or... Now, back to the issue of disappearances. Why is it that we have to get to a stage where the government thinks it can silence its critics by enforcing something as archaic and draconian as what we saw in the Moi era? Because this is exactly what we're seeing.
Yeah.
Is it that so that people would be afraid to speak and say this is wrong? What do you think it's supposed to happen? Because people keep being abducted, and from what I see, people just keep talking. It's not as though they're talking less.
Well, I would say that even if people keep talking, they get mental fatigue. You know, I've visited a number of prison police cells, and I dare say there are certain police cells, if you're taken there, you will never want to be picked up again. So it will reduce, let's say, the vigor
So it works.
in which you engage in. Yes, so it works. And, you know, a lot of families, because of the disappearances, those who would be witnesses, some are afraid because as much as the young people may be open to, you know, sleeping in the cells and, you know, going to the streets on several occasions, they have parents, they have family members who are concerned about them, who are worried about them. And so, you know, that pressure also from your family, just, you know, you need to think about others. How will it affect us? If you have children, how will it affect your children, your spouse? And so that pressure sort of works. And so it's a concerted effort that we need to talk as one voice and just push back. That we can't go back to a scenario whereby voices are silenced through abductions. You know, I dare say in the region, Kenya stands out because look at what's happening in our neighborhood, in the countries around us. We continue to be the beacon in terms of we say whatever we want, the way we want, and how we want it. Kenyans are not afraid to go and camp at the Twitter and Facebook accounts or, you know, whatever accounts of the head of state or any cabinet secretary and tell them off, and even call them and tell them off. But these are the scenarios that you can't do in our neighboring countries. And so this we need to jealously guard, because this constitution enabled Kenyans to be highly litigious, but at the same time enabled Kenyans to be able to engage proactively in terms of what do they want to see in their country, calling out their leaders for corruption and certain vices that they see in the society. And so for me I feel that if we don't fight for what we believe in, we might find ourselves reneging and going back. And you see, the playbook for Moi will come back again, because then we'll have the judiciary sinking and being afraid to voice itself out. Because once the citizens are not making noise, the citizens are not going to the courts, the citizens are afraid, the courts are on their own. And so we will go back to the Moi playbook, that despite having such a robust constitution, and hence, you know, we need to continue pushing back. And the efforts to find these missing Kenyans must continue. People must continue pushing to ensure that every single life that has been lost is held accountable. That's why we keep asking the relevant institutions must ensure they hold these individuals accountable. Because if we don't do that and let it slide the way Kenyans sometimes easily forget, then, you know, it precipitates for the future. Others will say, why should we go to the streets? Because the younger generation, I would say the Gen Zs, don't have the baggage that, you know, the X generation and which spread to the millennials because of the history of the challenges that have been there. They say they're only afraid of two things, marriage and pregnancy. So the rest is, you know, you can't scare them with it's fair game. You can't scare them with police cells and abductions. But if they get to a place where, their voices are also silenced, it means it spreads till the next generation. So it's up to us to protect this generation to be able to continue being active and proactive in the politics and democracy of their nation.
The president of the Law Society of Kenya is our guest this morning, Faith Odhiambo, and the people who are saying, yes, you really have stood out and you're serving not just your profession, but you're serving the country very well. So kudos to you from our listeners. Jackson Fessa says, Faith, good job. If you went for president of Kenya's seat, I would give you my vote, raw Safi. There's one thing that you told us, Faith Odhiambo, president of LSK, that one of the comments that you've made is you'd like to see the judiciary being firm and more firm on these cases and the incidences that are happening in the country. Why did you have to say that?
Well, you see, unless courts take up that active role, the citizens then will stop going to courts and go to the streets. You see, courts are the ones that separate and maintain that decorum as a nation. That as much as we have laws, they're the ones who breathe life into those laws. And so the importance that the courts play is quite great, because you remember, if you saw some of the comments of the Gen Zs, Law Society, ideally, every time we have a dispute, and we presented our views also on the Finance Bill 2024, and when they were ignored, Parliament passed, we knew the next step was to go to the courts to challenge the act once it was signed by the head of state. So that's the process that we normally do. But the comments, even from the Gen Zs and those who are in the streets, they were like, well, why should we go to court and they'll ignore court orders, or the court will not issue orders against the state? And so that's the hard place that the courts play. They need to be the firm and the last bulwark for the people of Kenya, because they are the only ones that can breathe life and put a halt to the kind of impunity that we sometimes see from the executive and the legislative arm, because we have also seen the legislative arm purporting to say that court orders cannot interfere with what they're doing, that they can do whatever they want. So you see, courts play quite an integral role, and unless also they take up their space and remain firm, then you'll find that we have a judiciary-led executive.
But then, Faith, the courts have issued orders. The courts have, directed. They have issued injunctions and said, do not proceed with this. This is an order. Come before court and explain yourself. And those have been ignored. What are courts to do? How do courts enforce their orders? You
hold the specific command, those in command are responsible. And I say this because if you see the case that we recently did of the acting Inspector General of Police, it was a clear show of court disobedience, ignorance of court orders, but at the end of the day, they had to come to court and apologize and ask for leniency after a committal sentence had been issued, and the court saw it fit to set aside the same. But you see, if it hadn't gone to that tangent and the court had not been consistent and held firm, irrespective of the challenges that the court had raised, that they felt that they were under attack, which the Law Society also came to just speak strongly about judicial independence. If the court hadn't taken that hard stance, then the kind of impunity we would have seen, ignoring and proceeding to do whatever they want, we would have seen. But you see, that's a lesson to show those in power that the court has actually the powers to hold you personally accountable. So that when the court gives orders of committal, it's not the office of the IG that will go to jail. It is that individual person who the court has committed that shall go to jail. And so it also reminds individual persons that hiding behind that have been given orders doesn't work, because eventually the law catches up to you. And the machinery that is the executive, it always comes full circle, and somebody always has to take the flak for the rest. And so it might turn out to be you. And so it gives that confidence that as long as the courts are consistent, we will stand with them, the people will stand with them, and it comes full circle. Those individuals shall be held personally responsible, which sends a message to the rest that you're not above the law.
There's a disconnect here, Madam President. The disconnect here is the court knows what it should do. It pronounces itself sufficiently clear. But the enforcers clearly do not seem to understand that when it is issued, they ought to actually act.
Yeah.
There's a complete disconnect. It's like the court is speaking to itself. Because if indeed the police service understood that they themselves were part of this process, then it would actually be simple. You could even have an IG being arrested because they have ignored a court order. You could have somebody higher being arrested. Now, if this happened, then people would know, these court orders are not things to be trifled with.
Yeah.
But so long as the police service feel that they take orders from some other source and most definitely not the courts, how do you think we're going to cure this?
We can cure this by, let the courts do their work and then block those who are disobeying those court orders from accessing and benefiting from those same courts. You see, they also have to make a stance. You cannot ignore a court order, then come back to get another court order for something else. You see, those who come to equity must come with clean hands. You can't expect me to, here I've told you bring this, but you refuse, you hold on to it, then you come with another plate and say, serve me this. And you're pretending, the court must also stop pretending that they're closing their eyes that, this is a different scenario. They must also recognize that they work as an entire judiciary. If they refuse to obey court orders, they should not be given audience before those honorable courts. The same executive and parliament is now before the honorable courts on question of a process that they went through. It's a court matter yet. We're waiting for the decision, so I won't get involved in it. But they're actually pleading for the court to see their side of the story and listen to them and, that their arguments augur better than the other side. And so if these are the same individuals that are ignoring court orders, then you don't allow them audience to those courts and hold them personally accountable. You see, holding and summoning, we've seen scenarios where the former Chief Justice, Maraga, would be summoned before Parliament to answer questions. Why not summon the Speaker of both the Senate, National Assembly, to answer questions before those honorable courts? Because these arms of government, they work independently, but also they work co-independent. They work also together. Interdependently. And so also you assert yourself as the judiciary and summon them to answer, because they cannot on one hand say they are above, they can do whatever they want, and then run to yourselves to seek audience. It's high time courts as well take up their important role and their place and summon these individuals, because when they're in that court, they are before an honorable court of law. They must obey court summons.
Do you think that the court should, basically court A should know what court B and C and D are dealing with?
Well,
because then you say if a matter is before court A, and it involves, for example, taxation measures, and Court A has made a determination on taxation measures, and then there's a matter in Court D on taxation measures, and that plea is now coming from the legislature or the executive. Court D should know what Court A has done, even if it's a separate matter. But the way you are behaving in Court A, I should not give you audience in Court D.
Well, if let's get it right. So if it's both on tax, on the similar issues, the way courts organize themselves, those matters can be consolidated if they're on similar issues, or be heard before one similar bench if they are concurrent or similar issues that they're dealing with. I would understand a scenario, obviously, if it's totally different matters. But the way our courts work is that, for example, you've refused to obey court orders with regards to summoning, let's say the current matter that is still ongoing, let's say the case of the MCA Wajir, you've refused to obey a certain court order, you've been summoned, you've refused to attend. eventually, when they come to you to ask that, because they came back to that same court and asked that this matter be struck out, where purportedly found the the body. The court can refuse to grant any of those orders until you respond to 1 or 2, 3 issues. Because even before an issue of, expelling that matter, you have to bring evidence indeed that body is for that particular individual. But what in essence we need to think about, even as the courts, is that how can we ensure that we apply pressure to some of our orders? You see, they have the option of, saying that, one, this is a court of law. They have refused to obey this court order, but we will continue to, just give these court orders that sometimes now are put as papers and set aside. The courts have the discretion as well to issue sanctions to those individuals, sanctions that they can say can be extended. We've adopted this new system, which I find quite dangerous in our country, of suspending declarations that we give you time to implement. They should think about now doing the same, though I don't support that narrative, but doing the same in terms of holding individuals accountable. We saw when, I think it was Odunga, when he was a High Court judge, issuing suspended orders, issuing orders that Kinoti would serve sentence, and if he doesn't do it now, when he leaves office, he would still serve that sentence, which now, got him scared, because he knew he'd leave that office. And one day he would face jail term. You see, and that's an option, because you can give orders and say that you will leave that office, but this individual is going to serve jail time, or this particular individual fines, which are hefty, will be meted. You see, it sends a message that you're not just sitting and saying, I am weak, there's nothing I can do, I've issued court orders and that is it. Or the other essence is to refuse to grant them audience until they obey court orders, if they're coming back on similar matters or a matter that is still live before court. So the courts, as much as they're saying they're activists and applying themselves based on the raising challenge matters that are coming, for us, or from this side of the divide, when we see suspended orders that you nullify, this is unconstitutional, and then you say, we give you 1 year before this order can be implemented. You see, it augurs a sense that either you're giving a soft bed for the executive and the legislature, and so who gives a soft bed to the people of Kenya? So violate our rights until a time that it's comfortable for you to regularize. It is okay. We as the courts are taking into consideration the rigors of, governance and the parliamentary challenges. Let's allow parliament to be able to exercise itself. So we as the third arm of government are also, we feel that the executive has pressures, and so let's give them time to clean up. But in that time, it's okay if your rights are violated. It's okay if you lose money, because we are giving government time. As citizens, you must understand. And so you see, it augurs against Article 10 of the Constitution, the supremacy of the people. So if you're saying you're the neutral arbiter that is supposed to, protect that right of the people, because the people don't have the power, the executive have the power. Parliament is making laws, and from you see when the movement of the Gen Zs, they were not able to stop parliamentarians from passing those laws. In fact, I saw someone making a joke that in the impeachment process, if they purported, the argument on social media was that they were paid. So, and I'm not saying that they have been paid. So that was the argument on social media. And they were saying, so tell us how much is your value, so we pay you.
So we can match it.
We can match it and have you, they'd kick them all out. But the courts also now, unfortunately, because they are not politicians, they're not playing that politics, must have to balance also thinking about the sovereignty of the people. There has to be that actual... People need to feel, as the saying goes, justice must be done, but must also be seen to be done. When the perception tilts that the judiciary is leaning towards the executive, then
Against
they
the
lose that legitimacy that they have as a neutral arbiter. And the unfortunate thing is that because we are a country that is, I would say, we value that ability to have your voice heard. It brings now the question of, are we allowing polarization of people in this country? Because if I cannot rely on you as a neutral arbiter, make that decision, and then people accept, it's painful to accept losses or decisions against you, but you swallow and you say, the court considered this.
My day shall come.
My day shall come one day. But if we feel that it's tilting towards one particular side, then you change the dynamics entirely.
Madam President, we have a Bill of Rights. And one of the things that was happening as this constitution was being written by Kenyans is they were writing it out of the history that they have had with the constitution that they were removing. This was the violation and the blatant violation of their rights by the state. And that's why all these matters were put in and said, we have a judiciary that shall serve this way. We shall have a Kenya National Commission on Human Rights. We shall have all these institutions that shall make sure that never again shall the people of Kenya feel as if they are being trampled on by their government, by the state. We are there. People have been disappeared by the government or by elements that nobody knows. People have been arrested. People have, been charged frivolously. People have turned up dead in many cases. We are there right now where people are missing. People are wondering, where are our loved ones? And yet, we have a constitution that is so robust. We have a law society of Kenya that's established by law. As one of the things is, yes, you promote the profession of law, but also the objects and functions of the society are to uphold the Constitution of Kenya and advance the rule of law and the administration of justice. I'm reading that from the LSK Act. The objects and functions of the society. Is it something that this law society can do for the people of Kenya to make sure that we head back to an era where you do not fear being abducted at any time of day, where you can go to court and compel whatever? I don't know, you're the lawyers and you're the society, to make sure that we don't have this? That we don't have bodies lying at City Mortuary, over 100 bodies that are unidentified?
And that's why I say that the law society has played its part. Even before the disposal of the bodies, we went to court, arising the same, and we said there's no proper process that had been put in place. And we have sat with the Nairobi County Council representatives and the CS of the county to just sit and look at a fair process, and the chief pathologist, to ensure that bodies are properly identified, marked, tagged, for the purposes of there being records, because of the resounding fear that bodies of those who may have disappeared would be part, and they would be swept under to be part of those who are disposed of. And so that's something we start to go through together. So and also with regards to moving the courts with parties that have come to us raising concerns, we've been quite active, taking up matters pro bono on behalf of members of the public, and also raising constitutional questions before these honorable courts with regards to how a lot of things have been done over the last 3-4 months in this country. And so we have done our part. The courts must also do our part. It's part of judicial discretion, because the courts make decisions based on ambit, of course, of the law and the discretion of the judge on the matter that is before him. And so as much as we are not in control of the court decisions, but as law society, we also criticize our judges as well, and that's why.
Can you move outside the jurisdiction of the judiciary of Kenya? The minority tribes, some minority tribes have actually moved out of the jurisdiction of Kenya, where they say that we feel that our government is trampling on our rights. If in this particular case, you're saying that the government of Kenya is actually not upholding the constitution, can you go elsewhere and say the people of Kenya are being killed, they are being disappeared, they are buried underground somewhere in Shakahola, they are lying in City Mortuary and other mortuaries?
Well, the implementation of those orders will be another thing, because you have to bring it back to our court. So, we don't want to do academic exercises of getting declarations. And we don't want to, I believe that there are still honorable judges, lords, and our certain ladies in our honorable courts that can still do their work and uphold the rule of law. And so we'll continue to call them out, and we'll continue to criticize their decisions, so that they know that they are also up to scrutiny. The same way we criticize the executive and the legislative arm, we shall also criticize the judiciary, because that's the only way that we can have also robust discussions. The only way a mind of a judge is through their pen, what they have written at the end of the day. And that's why people must question and also criticize them as well, because that is part and parcel of growth and part of democracy, because we have to raise our concerns and challenges. We might welcome certain decisions they have made, and of course reject certain decisions they have made. But they also must open themselves to be scrutinized and also criticized, because that is part and parcel. They hold public offices, and by virtue of that, they're enjoying public coffers. They must be accountable to the people of Kenya.
So this has to be a continuing conversation. It never ceases.
It never ceases.
Okay. Madam President, thank you for joining us.
Thank you as well.
In the next hour, we'll be talking about that matter of bodies that are lying in mortuaries, in morgues, that have to be disposed of. But then, what happens to them? Who are they? How do we ensure that they are properly identified? What do our laws say? Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
Come again soon. Faith Odhiambo is the 51st president of the Law Society of Kenya. She's been our guest.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.